Old History Microphone. I'm Ray Mofield, and we're visiting today near the dinner bell. Is that what you call your neighborhood?
Yes.
It's Ezba, Beale. Many of you will remember Ezba, I'm sure, from throughout the county, although I suppose he's lived in this area all of his life. But he was a Buick man in Benton for years. How many years were you there?
26 years.
26. Well, I figured a lot of people would know you from that. You worked with Gray Mofield, one of my all-time great friends. Now, Ezba, when were you born?
1911.
And
January the 2nd.
Was it along in this neighborhood?
Yeah, it was on Clear Creek, where the Baptist camp is. Born and raised there till I was 19 years old.
So you haven't strayed very far.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, now tell me your dad's name.
Gentry Beale. Yeah. And my mother's name was Minnie Beale.
Minnie Beale, and before
she was
you
a Kathy.
A Kathy. Okay.
She was Tom, Kathy, and Ellen's child.
Great. Did you know either of the sets of grandparents that you had?
Oh, yeah.
Well, tell us about them.
Well, I just had, as far as I can tell you, they were farmers and just the greatest people in the world. My grandmother loved to fish. She was a great fisherman, and she'd go back to the old field and have a big old pond back there and take us grandchildren and take us fishing. And then we'd come in and she'd clean the fish and fry them around the yard.
You enjoyed eating fish.
Oh, yes.
Did you get that same itch to be a fisherman?
Well, I love to fish, but I hardly ever go. That's right.
Well, now this would be a good place for a fisherman.
Yeah.
You're right around Jonathan Creek, where people drive from Chicago and St. Louis.
And catch a lot of fish, but I hardly ever go. About once a year I'll go and fish a little while. If I do good, okay.
Now, what was this grandmother's name?
Oh, Ellen.
Ellen. Okay.
And I remember my grandmother on the Beale side. Henry Beale was my grandfather. My grandfather. And him and my grandmother lived right here where the Baptist camp is for years. And then my daddy inherited a strip of it, and they lived there. My daddy did. And then I was born. That's where I was born.
You know, there were a lot of Beales around Callaway County. Several of them were quite wealthy individuals. One owned a hardware store, and one was a Ford dealer.
That's right. That was Tringman that owned the hardware store. And
Elmus Beale.
Elmus Beale owned the Ford place.
Yeah.
Well, I strayed from that. They got wealthy, and I spent all my Mercedes.
And you sold Buicks.
Yeah. I sold Buicks, and
I see you got one there in the driveway now.
Yeah, with 136,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Now, Ezba, where did you go to grade school?
When I went to grade school, I started out with going to Karen White. She was a teacher from somewhere around Benton, some of that white bunch around Benton. And I went to Stringer School, walked to Stringer School, back of Uncle Allen Jones's. He lived up on the old 68.
That wasn't more than a mile or so from here, was it?
Oh, man, yeah, it's about 5 miles.
5 miles, oh. Well,
yeah, we won't try.
It is kind of down the road.
Yeah, down the road, and then back over the hill.
Yeah.
And Uncle Allen owned the old school ground and gave it to him for a schoolhouse. And then whenever they done away with it, it went back to Uncle Allen. And then when I left there, I went from here to Joppy School.
Now that is over.
No, Joppy, wait a minute, I'm stronger. Johnson School.
Johnson. Now my dad went to Johnson.
Yes. That's right. I knew your father.
Kelsey Mofield.
Kelsey Mofield was a good friend of mine, and so now your mother, I think that she went around Joppa, didn't she?
She went to Blakely. It was over in the edge of Callaway County. The mail address where she was born was Almo.
Almo, yeah. I know about where it's at. And
if you crossed the road there at Hardin and went out what we call the Wadesboro Road, now the Tucker Road, you came to Wadesboro, and there were about 5 roads there, and then if you went straight south across the old wooden bridge over Wades Creek and kept going straight, Blakely School was about a mile from the line.
That's right. I know what was that.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Smiths in there.
Oh, yeah, Dog Smith. Why,
Yeah.
what was his name?
I don't.
Everybody called him.
Yeah, called him Dog Smith. I knew him, but I didn't know. I just called him Mr. Smith.
Yeah. I went to school with his daughter, but I
Yeah.
cannot think of that man's name.
I can't either, but there was some Smiths in there. I
And
tell you,
my uncle, actually my mother's uncle, my great uncle, Rob Jackson, lived along there, and Walter Blakely, and
yeah,
Dan Wyatt, and
yeah.
and my great-grandfather, Hal Edwards.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
You didn't know
No, I
that?
didn't know how was your
Yeah,
great-grandfather.
yeah.
All right, I'll tell you what. You see, where I live here now is the old Searles place.
Old Searles.
This is the old Searles place, right where I live. All right, Peyton Searles, my great-grandfather, my grandmother's daddy,
Uh-huh.
raised the family right here, and my grandmother was raised right in here where we're sitting. And that old house was just right up here on you, right where you see that old barn as you came by.
A lot of memories.
Yes, and she was raised here, and of course she'd tell us about it when I was growing up.
Yeah.
My grandmother was a great person to spoil kids, and she spoiled us all when we go down there. And
Now, when Dad and Mother married, they lived on Reedy Gay's place, and it was right inside of Barnett Cemetery. The next year, they moved to Jim Will Barnett's place, right beside of his store.
yeah,
Now, you've heard of
yeah,
that.
well, I went to it.
Yeah.
I went to it. I remember Uncle Jim well.
Well, now that's where I was born. The mail address was Hardin RFD 2, I believe.
That's right. That's what it was. Hardin too.
Henry Gardner, I think,
Yeah.
was the carrier.
Rudy Gardner was the carrier come Rudy.
Yeah, he
Taking
carried
over
Hardin RFD 1,
Well, now
and
Henry.
it went out toward Kirksey.
All right. Rudy
One or
Gardner.
the other.
All right. Rudy Gardner was our mail carrier for years, and I lived on Clear Creek,
Uh-huh.
down there where the Baptist camp is. That's old. And Henry Gardner worked towards Dexter and back the other way.
Oh, I see. I had it just backwards, didn't I?
I don't know. I know Henry. I barely knew.
I knew Henry carried one of them, and his
Rudy-
brother carried the other.
All right,
And then after Henry retired, they merged those
yeah,
together.
that's right.
And the present carriers have had to carry both of them, really.
Connie Norwood was the sub-carrier there.
Well, you know, he was a little bit kin to me through my dad's side. Now, my father's mother was Nancy Norwood.
Is that right? Well, what about Uncle Henry Norwood and them that lived at Hardin?
Well,
Is that relation?
all of those were kinfolk.
That's right.
Some kin.
That's what I thought.
Will Norwood
Yeah.
was a cousin of some
Will
kind.
and the boys.
Yeah.
I worked with them and around Hardin.
There was a whole bunch of
Oh,
Norwoods.
they're
There
good
was
people.
John Henry and Lou and,
Yeah.
oh, I can't name all of them.
And let me see.
But Connie was kind of a horse trader.
Connie was a horse trader.
Yeah?
Yeah, just old plug trader.
Uh-huh.
And,
Well, now, all those people were kin to me.
yeah. And I didn't know that. You learned me a whole lot. That's right.
I'm supposed to be learning from you.
No, you learned me a whole lot. See, Connie Norwood married my wife's sister the first time.
Oh, is that right?
Coley was Mildred's sister.
I see.
And Agnes, you know the Agnes.
Yes. Cool.
And you was talking, you were a little relation to Rudy Jackson, I guess.
I suppose so.
He thinks an awful lot of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rudy thinks lots of you. He was
Yeah.
a good friend. He came out here, him and his wife to sit out there, spent a lot of hours with us. Yeah.
Now, Rudy's uncle was my uncle by marriage.
Rudy's uncle.
Yeah, now that is Rob Jackson, who married.
Oh, I know Rob.
Married Ida Irvin.
Yes.
And then her brother was my grandfather. That was Solon Irvin.
Yeah. Solon Irvin?
That is my mother's father.
Hey, Solon Irvin used to live where we're at.
Is that
yeah,
right?
I know a house right up there.
Well, hey, now you're teaching me something.
All right. You remember, let me see. There was Marcus and Dewey, Irvin.
All of those were my mother's first cousins.
All right. Now, you were home where they're at, right in here.
Yeah.
That's right. That's where they were. They lived here for a while.
Uh-huh.
Then Marcus and his dad and some of them, let me see, there was little John Irvin too, and they moved somewhere out the other side of Hardin, back out in there somewhere. I never did know exactly where they went.
It's not far from Golo. I've been to their house. See, Lynn Irvin was their dad.
That's right.
And then he had a brother, of course, was Solon, my grandfather, and then there was one named Steve.
Yeah.
And some of the north side of the county Irvins were out of that group.
Well,
and
Marcus lived right close to Golo.
And
I've been to his home.
The girl was, now one of the girls,
was
Lucy married a Beale, I think.
Well, that's very easy.
And their son is an optometrist in Union City, Tennessee. I know Aunt Ida used to go down there.
Yeah.
Pat Beale.
Pat Beale,
and get her glasses.
All right, Pat is a cousin of mine.
Well, I may wind up being kin to you.
Pat Beale was a second.
You may not want to.
Hey, I'd be honored to be a cousin of yours. Or even a brother of yours. Yeah. You've got people think well of you, and I respect you very much.
Well, fine. Let's get back now to you finished school at.
I finished school at Aurora.
At Aurora.
And I rode a little horse down there, back and forth.
You know,
I was going to high school.
That seemed
that was high school one
pretty
time.
good little ways off then, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. Not far now.
I remember when there was a high school there.
Yeah.
I remember I graduated at Hardin in class 40, and in that same class at Aurora was Kelsey Warren's brother, Glenn.
Glenn.
And you know, Kelsey Warren married my mother's sister, Vera.
Vera? Yeah, I knew that. I knew that. Yeah, Vera. Vera's a good friend of ours, very good. And we think a lot of Vera, and we thought lots of your mother, too.
So I know there was a high school at Aurora at least through 1940. It may have seemed like it went through.
It went back
41, maybe. They merged it with Hardin.
No, I know what. I don't know. It didn't go no further than that, did it? High school. Then it merged with South Marshall or somewhere, didn't it?
Well, it merged with Hardin, Ezba.
It did.
Either in 40 or 41, I think.
I believe you're right, yeah. Because that was before South Marshall.
I do know that Glenn Warren was graduated there in the class of 40. I think I know that.
Yeah, I think you do too. And then they turned into just a grade school down here, you know, for a number of years.
They had some right famous people from there. Let's see, Hill that ran the farm co-op married a girl from over there, Lida, I don't know what her last name was. But Woodrow Hill.
Woodrow's man was down there.
And there was a fellow there named Damon Harrison. Now, not the Damon Harrison from Olive that was in my class at Hardin, but a little older fellow that I believe he told me he graduated Aurora in the class of 36, and he's been in the economic department in Frankfurt for 30 years or so.
I'm sure, because now, was he kin to Gus Harrison?
They were related.
They were. Well, now, Gus had a brother that was away from here.
I don't know his name. They had a brother named Ray that ran a store at Olive.
Yeah, Ray and Gus, and there was another one. Was it?
I can't.
Wasn't Reese?
Was it Heiss? That just worked.
Yeah, that's right.
About time you
said that.
That's
right, yeah. That's him.
Well, let me ask you where you met your wife.
I met my wife at a pea hauling at Lewis was right over just out from Joppa. One night they had an old-time pea hauling, and we went there, and she had a date with Clem Bars, and I was supposed to have been with Annis Johnson. Well, Annis didn't make it. 10 minutes late, and as we got the peas hauled, they was all out on the floor dancing, and she said, "Why ain't you on the floor?" And I said, "I ain't got no partner." And she said, "Come on, over the stage with you." So that started the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And I went to see her then for, I guess, 2 or 3 years. And when I was 19 past, well, I decided that I was the woman I wanted, so I just asked her to marry me.
Well, great.
Yeah.
And you've been happy.
I've been happy for 57 years. Be 58 years in August.
You don't mean
Yes.
it. You're not that old.
Well, man, I'm older than... ain't nobody as old as I am. I'm 76 years
Well,
old.
you look young.
Thank you. You're very nice.
Now, your wife's name was what?
Mildred. Mildred. She was Mildred Nelson, Ed Nelson's daughter.
You know, those Nelsons were some of the most beautiful women I ever saw.
They were good people when you learn to know them. They had their ways. Everybody's got them, but Mildred had hers. But I'm like the most of them. She's a good cook and a good housekeeper, and just pretty good girl.
Do you have any children?
2. I've got Marcinelle was my daughter, and she married William Wiley Jones. And Ezba, my son, August Ezba was my son that run Benton Safety Service, and he married Russell Hoffman's daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
what about any grandchildren?
I've got 2 grandchildren on the Jones side. Marcia Creek. Let me see, Marcia. Let me get this right now. Marcia Nell's daughter. Well, shucks. When you get old, you can't think of nothing.
Well, that's...
All right, she married David Creek. My granddaughter married David Creek. And my grandson is Barry Jones, and he's not married at the present. And Marcia had two children. That is my granddaughter, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
And she had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And my granddaughter married, I can't even tell you the boy's name, but she's 19 years old, and she married my great-granddaughter. And my great-grandson is 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
And they live out up in Edgewater, Galway County.
So you get to enjoy them.
Oh, yeah, I sure do. I love it. And they're all doing well. They've been good kids. I've had no problems in my life as far as family.
I want to get back and pursue something here
Okay.
that just struck me as you were telling about it. Now, you said you met your wife at a pea hulling. In pioneer times, from what I've read, and when I was growing up too, people had fun helping one another work.
Oh, yeah.
They'd have corn husking bees and
that's right.
quilting bees,
Right.
and they killed hogs together.
Yes,
they thrashed wheat together.
That's true. All that stuff. I've done it all.
Mm-hmm.
I've done every bit of that. I thrashed wheat right across this bottom here, just right across the creek. I thrashed wheat over there.
And you
My
took a
granddad-
real hard job and kind of made fun of it by everybody pitching in.
And they cut that wheat with a cradle, an old-time cradle, hand cradle. My granddaddy did.
Uh-huh.
And he'd dump it, and one come along tied in bones. Then we carried it to the thresher and got it thrashed, and got the wheat and carried it and had it ground in meal, flour. And we went to, well, Uncle Jim Will Bondage, you was talking about, you was being late. All right, Reuben Matthews had a grist mill there.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go over and have our corn ground, have our meal, bring it back and still be warm and grind it.
Yeah.
And Hardin one time had a flour mill over there.
Oh, yes.
All right.
I remember that.
All right. We've carried wheat over there and got it ground into flour.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of the brand name they used. It was something like Marco, wasn't it?
Marco, I believe, was it.
And that stood for Marshall County, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's where they got it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I remember the flour mill.
Yeah, I remember there was a guy, Irvin, who was a little kin to my mother. They were distant cousins, worked there for years. And a fellow that, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember that man's real name, but they called him P. Huller Pace. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, let me see.
He and Guy Irvin were the millers there when I was small.
Oh, I knew all them places. See, Ted Pace married my uncle's wife's sister.
Now, he ran the big department store.
He's the one that died upstairs.
Uh-huh, yeah. I remember what a beautiful store that was. Of course, Davenport Brothers was similar to it.
Yeah.
And one of them faced the railroad, Davenport Brothers, and the other one faced what we then called Main Street. I think they call it Commerce now.
Yeah, I think so. I saw it a few days back.
Boy, I'd go over there.
He saw one of them named Mofield Pace.
Well, now he ran a blacksmith shop.
He ran a blacksmith shop
somewhere.
there. Yes, sir, right there in Hardin, where that car place is, right where the mill is now.
That's right.
Right in there.
Yeah.
And, I can't think of the man that I'm trying to think of, though.
In later years, there was Houston and Reddick Pace. There was a man, I remember a shop one time, I don't know how many blacksmith shops there were in Hardin then, 2 or 3 though, and they called this, I believe this man's name was Claude McDonald, but they called him Dough Beater.
Dough Beater McDonald, that's
Remember
right.
that?
Yes, I do remember him.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Les Jackson ran a blacksmith shop there a while. I remember one thing, he was a great banjo picker.
Yeah. Yeah, he picked
If you're going to have a square dance, you get Les Jackson, then I mean.
He could whoop that day. You know, when you go thinking back, you remember back whenever that Hardin was booming kindly, the gardeners had a produce building there.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Ed Gardner.
Ed Gardner, and he bought cow hides and beef hides and chickens and then anything they had to sell from butter all.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And I remember that. Remember what it said.
Married Lucille Thweet.
Right.
And Chad's sister, Irene, married Ian Irwin.
Yeah.
Ran a garage.
Yeah, that's right. I know Ian and Irene well.
Now, those girls' mother, let's see, the father was Joe Thweet, and then the mother was Vera Jones, I believe she was. She had a brother named Ivan.
Ivan, yeah, that's right.
And
Vera Jones.
At one time, he ran a garage in Hardin.
Yes, sir, right where the old tobacco building.
Yeah,
right there.
Right there. And you remember on the other corner was where the big store was. There was a garage next to that was operated by Clyde Youngblood.
Well, I remember Clyde.
And the next house was Dr. Caulfield's office.
That's right, been there, and he's, I can remember back further than that. You remember when old Dr. Hughes had where the grocery store
It
was?
was upstairs, wasn't it?
Upstairs.
Now, that is my mother's cousin.
Is that right?
See, his first name was Irvin.
Is that right?
Irvin Hughes.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what.
Indeed.
He was our doctor for years, and then Dr. Caulfield. Whenever I got this leg broke, when a horse kicked me and broke my leg in the joint, Caulfield came out there that night, and it was bad and cold, and they didn't have anything to do with it back then. And he told my dad, said, get me a couple of slats out of his bed there.
Mm-hmm.
And he cut them off and put a
splint
on my leg and taped it in there.
Uh-huh.
Man, you talk about. No, they didn't know how no one said to do anything, and it like
that hurt.
Oh, man, what are you talking about? I like to know.
Yeah.
And he
So he got it back where it
I'll walk on it. My kneecap was in 3 pieces.
Oh,
He had bursted his
that
cross.
is serious.
Yeah, and then of course this way.
I
And
can remember him pretty well.
I remember
I
him.
believe Kelsey Warren's dad, Lex Warren, drove the car for him.
He drove a horse and buggy for him too before this, because they come to our house that night in a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Lex did, and he drove a car for him, an old T model.
Yeah.
And he left here and went up here, and I'll tell you, I know where he lived. I guess that's what, 62 up through there.
Yeah.
All right. I used to live up out of a little old town. I did know the name of that town, but I done forgot it now.
I never knew exactly what happened to
I
him.
can carry you to it.
Yeah. But, boy, those were the good old days. In a way, we had 2 doctors in Hardin.
That's what I say. Hardin one time boomed.
Yeah.
We had a lot of town one time.
I heard my dad say that before that, and this continued up till about World War II, actually, when both of those, Dr. Hughes and Dr. Caulfield were there, somewhat earlier, I guess way back in the teens or perhaps the 20s, he talked about a Dr. Russell that used to be there.
Old Dr. Russell and old Dr. Bean was out at Brewers. You remember him?
At one, yes, I do. And at one time there was Victor Stark was in Hardin before he went to Kirksey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I knew him.
One of the smartest.
That's right. One of the smartest men. And I'll tell you what, Eric Stark wasn't no dummy.
No.
He was a smart man. Eric.
And do you remember there was a Starks who was postmaster there? Leonis.
Leonis Starks, right.
And his son was newspaper editor.
Right.
Of Hardin Enterprise.
Hardin Enterprise, yes, sir. I'll say in a minute.
See, Hardin.
A fella told me he had one of them, but I'm going to try to get it. I'd love to have that.
That'd be worth something, wouldn't it?
Well, to me it would. I just, part of Hardin, I'd get a kick out of it.
Well, you know, we're down to about a minute left. Time gets away so fast. Do you have any last will and testament you want to make before we sign
I tell you
off?
what, I know so little that it's easy for me to get by. I don't know. No, I'll tell you.
Maybe a funny story or something.
No, I tell you what, if you want to, now my great-grandmother on the Morris's side, see, one of my great-grandmother was a Morris. You asked me that the other day and I didn't answer. And so her and my grandfather married, and they brought my great-great-grandmother, and she lived with her for a long time. And she was Ned Morris's wife. Yeah, and her name was, I thought of it this morning, I thought of her name.
Well,
I'll tell you what, I done forgot. When you get old, you forget everything.
I do it. It happens to me too. Well, thanks for the interview.
Oh, I just hope it. What you wanted,
you did well. You did really well.
I'm pleased with you coming and even asked me to talk to you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Your time.
This is Ray Mofield, and we're at the residence of Ezba Beale near the dinner bell, and we take you back now to Benton.